Welcome, sleepy soul. You're safe here. The day is done and night has arrived to cradle you in stillness. Tonight we're leaving the present behind and floating quietly back in time, to the calm heart of an ancient Persian garden. Let your thoughts soften. Let your breath slow. And together we'll drift into the quiet rhythms of a world far away where roses bloom by moonlight and soft footsteps pad along stone paths warmed by the sun. There will be no haste here, no rush, only calm, only stories told slowly in the hush of twilight. Imagine the faint rustle of leaves in a warm evening breeze, the gentle trickle of water from a stone fountain, the far-off cooing of doves beneath fig trees. That is where we begin. It is early morning, just past dawn, and the ancient city of Pasargadae is still wrapped in soft silence. Outside the city walls lies a garden. Not just any garden, but one crafted under the careful vision of the Achaemenid kings. This is a Persian paradise, a paradisa, from which the very word paradise would one day come. The sun has not yet touched the highest leaves, and dew clings to the tips of thyme and basil. All is still, but for the faint chirp of small birds hopping among the quince trees. A gardener, his tunic loose and his sandals quiet against the packed earth, steps gently along the path with a clay jug balanced in his arms. His name is Vahesh, and this is his morning ritual. He has walked this path since he was a boy, long before the white in his beard began to show. He stops to check the water channels, those delicate streams of stone-cut irrigation that bring life to every root and petal in the garden. These connats, underground aqueducts carved with care through soil and rock, bring fresh water from distant springs nestled in the hills. To Vahesh, they are silent friends, always flowing, always watching. Nearby, a slender tree drops a single pomegranate to the earth, a soft thud. Nothing more. Water is the heart of the garden, not loud, never hurried, just gentle, always arriving. Each channel is cut to an exacting angle, allowing water to flow naturally without the push of machinery. Here, water is honored. It is never wasted. It flows between raised beds of lavender, beneath shaded pavilions, past ivory-colored benches where scribes once rested under the silk of early day. Vahesh kneels near a small cedar, brushing fallen petals aside and checking the soil for softness. He takes a moment to sit and breathe, his eyes closed, his shoulders still. The garden breathes with him. In another part of the garden, a young boy carries a woven basket full of sweet plums. His task today is simple: gather fallen fruit for the kitchen in the estate's small villa. He pauses, squatting beneath a mulberry tree, watching a ladybug crawl along the rim of a fig leaf. In a shaded courtyard tucked beneath a canopy of grapevines, the kitchen begins to stir. Bread dough has been rising overnight in clay bowls lined with cloth. A woman with strong arms and a soft voice begins shaping it into round, flat loaves. She hums softly as she works, a tune passed down through mothers and daughters. The tandoor, a clay oven built into the earth, glows softly as the fire awakens. Flames crackle gently, never in a rush. The scent of flour and wood smoke begins to mix with jasmine on the breeze. A few doves gather near the stone wall, watching with quiet curiosity. Occasionally, one coos, another flutters gently to a higher branch. Nothing disturbs the moment. A cat, sleek with white paws, curls atop a warm stone, flicking its tail once before settling in again. As the morning stretches on, the first golden touch of the sun reaches the higher branches of the orchard. The roses awaken fully now, soft reds, pale pinks, ivory whites, each petal opening slowly as if sighing in the warmth. Their fragrance begins to rise, sweet and heady but not overwhelming, curling into the air like incense from a sacred lamp. Near the rosebed, small bees work steadily. They hum, not loudly, not in haste, but in a rhythm that seems ancient, as if they too remember the hands that planted this garden generations ago. They pause at each bloom, sip a little, then drift onward without complaint or need. Vahesh returns to the jasmine wall and runs his fingers along its vines, checking for signs of dryness. No tools clank, no orders are shouted. All is done through quiet observation and the memory of touch passed down through years of tending. Further along, two apprentices gather spent blossoms into a woven sack, not for waste but for perfume. This garden is more than a place of beauty. It is a place of purpose. Fragrant oils are pressed from rose petals and sandalwood bark, folded gently into glass vessels with wide bases and narrow necks. Cooled in the shade, tucked in the northern edge of the garden, stands a cedarwood pavilion, raised just slightly above the rest of the landscape so that it catches a breeze from every direction. The steps are low, the arches tall, and soft shadows dance across its marble floor. Here, the master scribe sits with his back to a fluted column, a scroll gently unrolling in his lap. He wears a soft tunic dyed in saffron, and his fingers move slowly as he copies verses from an ancient poem, words written in Old Persian, held in balance by care and silence. Beside him, a younger apprentice reads aloud, not loudly, but just enough to let the rhythm of the lines rise into the air like wind-blown silk. A third boy fans the scrolls gently, keeping dust away, and flies from landing. It is not a task done for show, nor a punishment. It is simply part of the slow cycle of the day, the turning of rolls like a water wheel. Outside the pavilion, fig trees spread wide arms above the garden paths. Birds flit between their leaves. Somewhere in the branches a nightingale offers a short, elegant trill, then falls quiet again. As the sun climbs toward its peak, the garden does not bustle, it breathes. A large olive tree in the western corner offers wide shade upon a low stone table. A meal is being laid out, not in haste but in harmony. A woven cloth is placed down first, and bowls of simple fare are arranged slowly one by one. There are fresh dates and flatbread, cucumber with mint, and yogurt cooled in clay pots. Figs from the garden are halved and sprinkled with crushed walnuts. A small dish of honey catches the sunlight like a mirror to the sky. The workers and caretakers of the garden come quietly to sit cross-legged around the cloth. There is no need for loud talk or celebration. Just shared glances and slow bites, each person connected by the rhythm of labor and the peace of the garden's company. Nearby, two children chase each other along the path, giggling softly. They hold hands, take turns hiding behind hedges, and laugh so lightly it blends with the wind. After the midday meal, the sun becomes gentler, and the shadows stretch softly across the walkways. In the perfumer's corner of the garden, shaded beneath a lattice of trailing vines, wide clay basins sit cooling in the breeze. They are filled with petals, rose, myrtle, jasmine, and soaked in gentle oils pressed from the seed of the sweet almond. The perfumer, an older woman with wrists full of copper bangles, moves with the quiet certainty of someone who has done this every day for decades. She stirs the mixture slowly with a wooden paddle, careful not to bruise the flowers. This is not a job done quickly. It takes days for the scent to ripen, to steep into the oil as time itself seeps into memory. Nearby, copper pots bubble lightly over low coals, distilling another batch through old clay filters and silken cloth. She hums softly, her voice no louder than the breeze. Her granddaughter sits beside her with knees tucked up, stringing together dried blossoms with a cord of silk. Their silence is warm, not empty. A pair of green parakeets perch on a nearby branch, watching without a sound. Tucked just beyond the perfumer's corner is a badger, a tall, elegant wind tower built into the estate's central villa. Its purpose is simple, yet brilliant: to catch the faintest breeze and direct it downward into the shaded rooms below. Inside, the air is cool, not chilled but refreshingly different from the outer sun. In this cooled room, two elderly scribes rest with their sandals removed, reclining on wide cushions set atop a low dais. Their scrolls are stored in a polished cedar cabinet safe from the light. One of the men reads slowly, his fingers brushing the ink as he follows the words. The other rests with his eyes closed, not asleep but drifting. On a nearby shelf rests a bowl of sliced quince and chilled melon, beads of condensation forming gently on the clay surface. Above them, carved latticework scatters the daylight into dozens of soft shapes that move with the wind, like fish in a calm sea. Everything here moves without hurry. Even thought itself slows to match the stillness of the space. Outside once more, the garden's longest path stretches toward the western wall, where olive, pistachio, and almond trees grow in neat rows. The gardener, Vahesh, walks this path now with his tools tucked into a sling over his shoulder. The heat is lighter now, but still warm upon the skin. He stops at a stone bench to rest. There he takes from his pouch a handful of seeds, not to plant today but to examine. He rolls them between his fingers, feeling their texture as if remembering the trees they will become. One by one he returns them to the pouch. Behind him, a young woman trains a vine along a trellis, tying it gently with linen thread. She does not rush. There is no deadline here, only seasons. The sun catches the surface of a shallow fountain nearby, and light dances across the surrounding walls like the reflection of silk moving in slow water. The air smells of thyme and sun-warmed stone. In the weaving room beside the villa's inner courtyard, two sisters sit on the floor in front of a wide loom. Threads of fine silk stretch taut across the frame, dyed in shades of ochre, indigo, and soft green. The older sister moves the shuttle slowly, back and forth, her hands steady and practiced. The younger girl watches the threads shift into gentle patterns, waves, flowers, the outline of cypress trees, designs inspired by the very garden beyond their walls. It is slow work. Each tapestry takes weeks, but none of that matters now. The room is quiet, except for the brushing of fibers and the creak of wood. Outside, the courtyard pool reflects a perfect sky. A heron lands beside it, peers into its reflection and waits. Then, just as slowly, it walks away without a sound. In the distance, bells chime faintly, perhaps from a temple or a trader's arrival in the city beyond the walls. As the shadows stretch longer and the sun tips slowly toward the horizon, a soft hush descends across the garden. The birds that had once soared and chattered above now settle. Doves return to their roosts on the tiled eaves of the pavilion, each one gliding in on silent wings, heads bobbing, feathers whispering as they land. From beneath the citrus trees a breeze stirs. The air carries the scent of sweet orange blossoms, warm earth, and distant smoke, perhaps from a pot of lentils simmering in some corner of the estate's kitchen. The sky begins to turn. The blue fades into a soft apricot, streaked with the thinnest threads of lavender. In the quiet, the garden seems to pause, not sleep, not stillness, but a kind of reverence, as though it too knows that day is ending. The last light catches on the edge of the fountains, water glows gold, and then, slowly it fades. In the cedar pavilion the scrolls have been rolled and tied with care, cushions are fluffed and dusted, and now a boy carries a shallow brass tray with oil lamps, small palm-sized vessels with thin cotton wicks. He sets them along the low shelves that circle the space. One by one he lights them. The flames flicker to life gently, with no sharp sound or motion. The light they give is golden, amber, barely brighter than a reflection, but it is enough. The master scribe, no longer writing, hums a soft melody, one that might be a prayer or just a rhythm remembered from boyhood. His apprentice listens with eyes half closed, the day's learning still floating softly in his mind. Outside, the fountain continues to trickle. Cypress trees stand like tall sentinels. A single fig falls with a quiet thump into the grass as the last light leaves the sky. A nobleman walks the garden path slowly, with his hands clasped behind his back. He wears a robe dyed with deep indigo and stitched with patterns of the moon and cypress. His sandals make no sound on the packed earth path. This is not a walk of purpose but of peace. He walks not to reach the end but to be within the moment, to feel the breeze on his face, to hear the garden speak its soft language. 2 gardeners follow behind, far enough to keep distance but close enough to offer water if needed. They carry no tools now. Their work is done for the day. Along the walkway, lanterns have been placed in shallow niches, glass vessels with floating flames that seem to hover like stars. The nobleman pauses to admire a vine now heavy with jasmine, its fragrance stronger in the cool night air. Above, the first true stars begin to show. In a shaded alcove half hidden by flowering vines, sits a small prayer bench. A young woman kneels beside it, head bowed, whispering a prayer older than memory. Her lips move slowly, her fingers trace patterns in the air. She is not alone. Many who tend the garden have their private moments like this, unseen by most but always honored. No chimes mark the hour. Only the garden itself knows when evening becomes night. The villa's rooftop glows with low firepots, their flames protected by clay screens. Soft music begins from a reed flute somewhere unseen. It drifts like smoke, curling through the arches, blending with the wind and the jasmine. The garden is no longer a place of work or duty. It has become a cradle for sleep, for memory, for quiet. The moon, pale and calm, begins to rise. High above the garden, the stars shine. Their light is steady, soft, silver pinpoints scattered across a sky the color of deep velvet. Between the trees, the tall cypress spires stretch upward, silent, ancient. Cypress trees were always sacred to the Persians. They symbolized eternity, unbending, evergreen, ever-reaching. Tonight they stand guard over the garden like loyal sentinels, watching the sleep of every flower, every bird, every breath. From somewhere in the distance a low bell sounds once, not to wake anyone, just to mark that midnight has passed and the world continues gently on. In the pavilion, one last lamp flickers and dies. And now the garden sleeps, and so, dear listener, the garden sleeps, and so may you. Let its stillness curl around you like a soft blanket. Let the wind and the olive trees hush your thoughts. Let the moonlight guide you gently into dreams. There is no more to do, no more to remember, only peace, only now. Let the scent of the jasmine carry you into stillness. The cypress will keep watch until morning. The garden breathes, and so do you. Even as your eyes grow heavy, the earth continues its ancient rhythm beneath you. In the soft soil beneath the garden paths, earthworms stir slowly. Seeds that were scattered by hand months ago lie sleeping in their beds, gathering strength for a bloom yet to come. A pomegranate fruit, forgotten on the branch, sways lightly in the breeze. Its ruby seeds are hidden within, glistening in the moon's memory. The walls of the garden do not hold in the life, they protect it, cradle it. A boundary not of confinement but of peace. Within it, life sleeps. Dreams travel through the air like faint perfumes. Perhaps the garden itself dreams too, of older times, of footsteps long faded, of laughter echoing under the columns. The sky is deep and infinite now. Your breath slows with it, and sleep comes like a veil of silk. There is nothing left to hold on to now. You may let go. Let go of the names and dates, the thoughts and plans. There are no emperors here, no dynasties, no burdens from today or tomorrow. There is only you, resting under the cypress. The stars do not ask anything of you, the olive trees do not worry, the water does not rush. All is calm, all is still. The garden watches over you, its stories are now part of your dreams. Sleep, traveler, you are home. The afternoon has settled across the walled garden like a silken shawl. The sky above is pale blue, bleached by the sun and veiled with the thinnest lace of clouds. In the quietest corners of the garden, the warmth has settled like honey, thick and slow and sweet, clinging gently to the stone walls and the smooth paths below. Here, in this ancient paradise, time walks barefoot. At the far side of the garden, where the cypress trees grow in narrow rows and their shadows stripe the white path, a soft breeze moves the leaves like a quiet conversation. Beneath one tall fig tree, where the pale fruit dangles like forgotten bells, a young girl pauses to watch a fig's long shadow stretch over the stone. Her name is Yasmin. She is perhaps 9 summers old, dressed in a light linen shift that flutters with every gust of wind. In her hand she holds a wide-leafed fan, woven by hand with palm fronds and papyrus thread. Her dark eyes blink slowly at the fig as if it has whispered something to her only the garden can understand. Near her, not far, stands Anash, the old gardener. His hair is white like sun-bleached straw, and his tunic is patched but clean. He holds a long-handled rake, though he doesn't use it just yet. He's watching the fig tree too, smiling with the kind of softness that comes only from many quiet years spent in the company of leaves. "You see that shadow, little one?" he says gently. Yasmin nods. "It's longer than this morning." "That's how you know the garden is getting sleepy," he says. The figs start whispering to the sun, telling it to rest. She giggles. "Do plants really whisper?" Anash leans down, slowly, carefully. His knees creak a little like the old date palms. "Of course they do, but only when the wind is listening. The air between the fig trees feels like warm silk, not hot, not heavy, just the soft stillness of a place that knows how to breathe. Every petal and branch moves only when the wind wishes it, and today the wind is in no hurry at all." Anash sets down his rake and points toward a row of clay pots nestled under the shadow of a mud brick wall. Their shapes are rounded, their lips wide, and each holds a growing thing. Some with herbs that twist gently upward, others with thick-leafed succulents and tiny flowering buds. "These are the quiet ones," Anash says. "The herbs we use not just for taste, but for healing, for cooling the body, for clearing the breath." He kneels beside one of the pots. Its surface is decorated with a faded swirl pattern, likely brushed on long ago with a reed dipped in iron pigment. The soil inside is dark and freshly turned. From it grows a low-green plant with soft feathered leaves. "Shatranj," he says. "Tansy. The garden keeps it for fevers, but not too much and even the bees will fly away from you." Yasmin kneels beside him and runs her finger along the edge of the pot. The clay is rough and warm to the touch. She closes her eyes and leans closer, breathing in. "It smells like the oven at dusk," she says softly. Anash chuckles. "Yes, bitter warmth. Everything in the garden has a scent, but not everything shares it freely." He moves on to another pot, this one filled with basil. "This one is more generous," he says, brushing the leaves lightly. A cloud of bright, spicy fragrance lifts into the air and drifts between them. Yasmin smiles and closes her eyes again. She does not speak, she simply breathes. Farther down the row the pots continue. Mint, hyssop, coriander, lavender, each one a quiet voice in the garden's ancient choir. As the sun inches a little farther west, the garden grows quieter still. Even the birds hush their calls, their wings settling in the shelter of fig branches and pomegranate shrubs. Time in the garden always slows with the heat, like honey thickening in a clay bowl. Anash stands slowly and brushes the soil from his knees. Yasmin follows, trailing her fingers over the edges of the clay pots one last time. Their shadows stretch long and slanted now, pointing toward the central path, the one paved with river stones, cool and smooth beneath bare feet. "Come," Anash murmurs, voice nearly lost in the breeze. "Let's follow the water." They walk without hurry, their sandals brushing gently against the dust. To the untrained eye the path seems dry. But beneath it, deep beneath the ground, something ancient is flowing, a secret, silent stream that gives life to all they see. It is called a qanat, a Persian marvel of underground engineering. Long tunnels carved by hand, sloping ever so slightly, drawing water from deep mountain aquifers and guiding it to the gardens below. No sound, no splashing, only the hush of earth releasing its cool gift. Anash stops at a small stone grate near the edge of a sunken bed of irises. He kneels again, resting a palm over the vent. "Feel this," he says. Yasmin places her hand beside his and a soft breath of air brushes her skin. "Cooler than the sun-warmed air above." "It's cold," she whispers. He nods. That's the Kanat speaking. It's been flowing longer than the garden has grown. It keeps the roots happy. The figs, the olives, the jasmine, they all drink from it. They walk farther, and soon a small marble basin comes into view, tucked beneath a canopy of vines. Water trickles gently into it from a narrow spout, the only visible sign of the underground stream. The water sparkles in the light, catching the shadows of grape leaves above. Around the basin, bees drink carefully from the edges. A single butterfly hovers, then lands on a smooth stone. The hush is deep here, broken only by the softest splash of falling water. Do you see, Anash says, the garden listens to the water, and so do we. Yasmin smiles and dips her fingers into the basin, watching the ripples bloom outward like tiny lotus petals. They step quietly now, careful not to disturb the hush that has settled like a light shawl over the garden. Even their sandals seem to whisper against the worn path of packed earth and stone. Ahead, the sun glows softer, filtered through the high branches of cypress trees, which rise tall and still like green-painted columns. Beneath their reach lies the pomegranate court, a sunken grove where the pomegranate trees grow in patient clusters, each one twisting gently as if listening to the wind. Their branches are thick with fruit, ruby red, round and heavy with promise. Some are split open already, revealing the jewel-like seeds within, glistening like tiny garnets in the golden light. Birds flit here and there, pecking politely, leaving the rest untouched. Yasmin stops to admire one particularly large fruit, its cracked skin glowing like candlelight. Are they ready? She asks. Anash gently squeezes one hanging low to the path. Soon, he replies. Some are early, but most wait for the second full moon after the longest day. That's when they're sweetest. As they move deeper into the grove, the air becomes even more still, as if the garden itself has paused for a breath. In the very center of the grove is a circular stone platform. Upon it lies an old terracotta jar, cracked but whole, its lid covered with a clay saucer to keep out the bees. Next to it, curled upon a flat cushion of reeds, lies a sleeping cat. She is long and thin, with fur the color of sun-baked almonds. Her tail flicks once, twice, then goes still again. Her eyes remain closed. She sleeps deeply, as if she's always slept here since the time of the old kings. She belongs to no one, Anash says, kneeling beside her, but she's been here longer than I have. Some say she was born with the garden. Yasmin kneels beside him. What's in the jar? Anash smiles. Pomegranate syrup, thick, sweet, dark as the night sky. We take only a little and always leave the rest. Yasmin gazes at the sleeping cat and nods as though she understands. The quiet around them feels sacred, not heavy, not silent, but full, as if even the trees are dreaming. Overhead, a dove coos softly. The branches sway ever so slightly. The cat breathes slowly. Nothing moves in haste here. The path turns again, now leading toward the outer wall, where the sun leans heavily across the top of the garden, casting long golden fingers over the stone. Here, near the edge of the garden's world, sits a simple outdoor kitchen, half shaded by an overhanging canopy of woven reeds and grapevines. The kitchen is not bustling. No fire roars, no pots boil. This is the afternoon kitchen, where work is slow and silence is welcome. The kind of kitchen where stories are whispered, not shouted. A low clay platform holds flat stones used for grinding. One of them is dusted with white, ground chickpeas or barley flour perhaps. Beside it, a slender wooden table holds a wide fig leaf, and on it, halved figs drying in the sun, their insides pink and gleaming like soft velvet. The figs give off a warm, faint sweetness, not overpowering, but comforting, like a familiar scent on an old robe. A young woman tends to the figs, placing each one gently with the care of someone tucking children into bed. She hums to herself, a quiet tune with no words, just notes that seem to echo the mood of the afternoon. Near the wall, bundles of herbs hang upside down, tied with twine and faded ribbon. Sage, mint, and dried dill rustle softly as the wind passes by. A simple ceramic bowl rests beneath them, catching any loose petals or seeds that might fall. Nothing is wasted. Anash steps into the kitchen quietly. He greets the woman with a smile, and she returns it without speaking, offering him a handful of dried apricot slices. Yasmin sits on a low wooden stool and watches the slow rhythm of the place. The way the woman slices the figs, the way the breeze lifts the herbs, the soft clink of clay lids being lifted and replaced. There is no hurry here, no rush to finish. The work itself is the point. In one corner, a clay oven sleeps under a woven cover. It will not be lit again until dusk. For now, its surface is warm from the earlier sun, and a small cloth bundle rests atop it, likely bread rising in the last of the day's heat. A goat's bell jingles somewhere beyond the wall, distant and soft. The scent here is one of warmth, dried fruit, old clay, sun-touched stone, and crushed leaves, the kind of smell that wraps around the senses like a blanket. Yasmin leans her head on her arms, watching a single fig wasp crawl carefully over a sliced fig. Will it stay sweet until night, she asks. Anash nods, even sweeter by then. And so, in the quiet kitchen, time flows like the garden's water, unseen but always present. The light begins to shift, not fading but softening, like the hush that settles over a room when someone begins to whisper a tale. Yasmin and Anash step out of the kitchen path and follow a gentle bend in the walkway. The flagstones here are older, worn down in the center from years of soft footsteps. Dried leaves collect in the edges like pages folded into a book. Ahead, they reach a vine-covered pavilion, a grape arbor with wooden posts wrapped in climbing vines, their leaves thick and green and rustling softly in the late afternoon breeze. The canopy above is alive with dangling clusters of grapes, some pale green and translucent, others deep purple and almost black. The air beneath the arbor feels cool and damp, like stepping into a shaded pool. A faint scent of crushed leaves, ripe fruit, and sun-warmed wood fills the space. Here, under the arched trellis, the world seems to hold its breath. A low wooden bench runs along the edges, and Yasmin sits down carefully, brushing aside a single fallen grape that's left a faint stain on the stone. Anash does not sit. Instead, he plucks a small bunch of grapes and holds them out to her. They were planted by my grandfather, he says. He said the first vine came from the western mountains, a gift from a passing trader. It took root and never left. Yasmin eats one, and the taste is simple, not overly sweet but refreshing. The skin bursts softly and the juice is cool on her tongue. Above them, a lizard watches from a post, motionless, except for the slow wave of its tail. Bees pass through now and then, buzzing softly, uninterested in people, moving from leaf to leaf as if checking on each one. The pavilion is a place of waiting. Not idleness but calm expectancy. It is where one sits and listens for the breeze or watches how the light changes the color of the grapes. It is a place where stories often begin but are rarely finished. Anash sits at last, resting a clay cup of water between his hands. In the old days, he says softly, the scribes would come here to write, not scrolls of law or trade but poems, about clouds or figs or the shape of a bird's wing. They said the words came easier here. Yasmin tilts her head. Do you write poems? Anash smiles but doesn't answer. Instead, he closes his eyes for a moment, as if remembering something from long ago, then he opens them slowly. Maybe, he says, if the grapes are sweet enough. A breeze stirs through the vines above, sending a soft shower of dust and petals down through the air. One or two grapes fall gently, rolling toward the edge of the path. The light dances through the leaves like ripples on a quiet pond. And for a moment, just a moment, it feels as if the world has stopped moving. The path from the grape arbor bends westward, where the shadows stretch longer and the breeze carries a new scent, wet stone, fresh water, and the faintest hint of jasmine. Anash and Yasmin move slowly now, their steps nearly silent on the ancient stones. The garden feels different here, more hushed, as though it is listening. And then, as the branches part and the light shifts, they arrive at the reflecting pool. It is not large, more like a wide basin of still water ringed by smooth black tiles. But it holds the sky as perfectly as a polished mirror. Overhead, a few clouds drift lazily, and they seem to move twice, once above and again in the water below. The pool is framed on three sides by a low stone border, and on the fourth by a single curved bench, carved from limestone and warmed by the afternoon sun. Yasmin sits there, her fingers resting on the edge of the bench, her gaze fixed on the reflection of a bird circling slowly above. In one corner, a stone lion's mouth pours a thin stream of water into the pool. The sound is soft, a trickle, steady and constant, the heartbeat of the garden. No splash, no rush, just a delicate stream, like the world is whispering something very old and very quiet. Floating on the water are a few flower petals, likely from the jasmine vines nearby. They drift lazily, turning in place. A single bee lands for a sip, then lifts away again with a gentle buzz, leaving a ripple that spreads in perfect circles, touching everything and nothing. Anash kneels by the edge and picks up a smooth river stone, dark and oval. He holds it out to Yasmin. Throw it gently, he says, so it skips once, maybe twice, no more than that. Anything more would wake the fish. She smiles and tosses it, a soft flick of her wrist. The stone touches the surface, skips once, and sinks with barely a sound. The ripples reach the petals and carry them in slow arcs. The pool remembers everything, Anash murmurs. Every breeze, every word, every petal that lands. Yasmin leans forward. Even dreams? He pauses. Especially dreams. They fall into silence again. Not an awkward silence, but the kind that only happens in sacred, peaceful places. The kind that feels full, not empty. From beyond the jasmine, a dove coos softly, and a second one answers. The sky has begun its slow drift toward evening, turning a shade deeper, bluer, like fabric soaked in indigo. And the water still reflects everything. Even the quiet. Evening does not fall all at once in the garden. It unfolds like the petals of a night-blooming flower. From the reflecting pool, Yasmin and Anash continue their quiet walk, though their steps are even slower now, as if time itself were stretching out, giving them more space to savor the peace. They pass beneath a stone archway carved with ancient floral patterns and enter a smaller courtyard, a place of scents and smoke. The courtyard is ringed with fragrant plants: basil, hyacinth, lavender, and night jasmine, all exhaling their perfume as the heat of the day retreats. At the center of the space sits a raised incense table, low and broad, made of red clay and gently worn by years of use. A shallow brazier rests atop it, its coals still glowing faintly. Anash takes a pinch of crushed frankincense from a small ceramic jar and drops it onto the embers. A soft curl of smoke rises, pale and slow, like a ribbon unfolding in still water. It spirals upward and disappears into the golden dusk. Yasmin watches the smoke, her eyes following its path. "Why do you burn it?" she asks. "To remind the air to be still," he replies gently, "and to tell the spirits of the garden it's time to rest." There is no urgency in his voice, no mysticism, just a quiet respect for the rhythms of the place. A small copper bell hangs beside the table. Anash strikes it lightly with a carved stick. The sound is soft and round, not sharp, not loud, like the first star appearing before the sky has fully darkened. The plants around them seem to respond. The jasmine petals, open wide all day, begin to close ever so slowly. A few bees return to their hidden hive in the fig tree, and a cat, pale and long-legged, winds its way through the herb beds, silent as breath. The courtyard begins to fill with layers of scent: wood smoke, resin, herbs, and the sweet heaviness of flowers. There is no wind, only the occasional breath of moving air that stirs a single leaf, then retreats again. Anash lowers himself onto a cushion near the incense table, and Yasmin follows. They sit without speaking, listening to the faint crack of embers and the occasional flutter of wings above. The world is slowing, not stopping, but softening. The kind of moment that invites you to close your eyes, even if only for a heartbeat. And perhaps without realizing it, Yasmin does. As the incense smoke thins and the scents settle into the cooling air, the garden begins to shift again. This time, it isn't the sun that changes the light, but the lanterns. One by one, they begin to flicker to life, not from fire, but from carefully placed oil lamps set along the narrow stone path that winds back through the fig trees. Each flame is shielded by a glass vessel, some clear, others gently tinted in shades of amber, rose, or pale green. The flames shimmer like small stars caught in jars. Yasmin rises and follows Anash as he moves slowly down the lantern path, his silhouette soft against the darkening trees. He carries a long-handled taper, lighting each lamp with the same deliberate care as one might brush a sleeping child's hair. The air is cooler now, with just a hint of chill, and the fig leaves rustle faintly above. They come to a wide, low fig tree, old, gnarled, and beloved, with broad branches that sweep down almost to the earth. It's a place hidden in plain sight, known only to those who walk the garden slowly enough to see it. Anash pauses here. "This," he whispers, "is where the garden keeps its secrets." He crouches and lifts one of the heavy lower branches, revealing a space beneath. A hollow, wide and softly padded with dry fig leaves and smooth earth. Inside is a small stone basin, shallow and filled with what looks like water, though it barely ripples. Yasmin crawls beside him, careful not to disturb the leaves. "What is it?" "An old wishing pool," Anash murmurs, "not for throwing coins, just for thinking." The garden listens here. The space is dim but comforting, the kind of dimness that makes your voice feel too loud unless you whisper. Yasmin looks into the basin. It reflects no sky, only the curve of her own face and the dark outline of leaves above. She says nothing. Instead, she simply places one finger into the cool water and watches the ripples grow. They lap gently against the stone, then fade. Anash does not ask what she wished. He simply lights a final lantern, a tiny one, and leaves it beside the basin. They stay there a while longer, in silence, in stillness. Somewhere behind them, a reed flute begins to play. Its song is soft, unhurried, almost as though the garden itself is humming. From beneath the fig tree's embrace, the garden feels like a cradle, soft, quiet, and safe. But soon, even this hidden hollow grows dim, and the sky above deepens into a shade of inky twilight, pierced by the first silver stars. Yasmin and Anash step back into the open, and the world feels just a little different. It is no longer the same garden as it was in the sun. It has softened into something even gentler, something just for those who linger late. The air is cooler now, brushing skin like linen on stone, and the scents are changing once again. Around them, certain plants that rested through the day now begin to open, as if waking just for the moonlight. Most prominent among them are the tuberoses, whose pale creamy blooms curl wide in the dimness and release a scent so soft and sweet it's barely a whisper. Near the walls, evening primroses glow faintly, yellow petals unfurling like sleepy eyes opening to dream. Small moths begin to flutter near them, slow silver-gray creatures drawn to the scent more than the light. Anash says nothing, he only watches, and Yasmin too feels no need to speak. Instead, they follow the cypress-lined path that leads back toward the central fountain, the heart of the garden. The water here is quieter now, its gurgling softened by the evening hush. A few stray petals float on the surface spinning slowly, their colors muted in the moonlight. The sky above is a deep blue-violet, streaked with thin silver clouds. Somewhere far away, a nightbird calls out once, then falls silent. Beside the fountain, a low stone bench sits beneath an arched trellis woven with climbing honeysuckle. Yasmin climbs up and curls her legs beneath her. Anash settles onto the stone ground nearby, leaning against the fountain's edge with the stillness of someone who has done this 1,000 times. They sit in this quiet pocket of the garden, listening not just to the sounds, but to the absences, the places where things have grown still, the gentle retreat of bees to their hives, the last flutter of petals, the distant sound of gates being closed. The garden is not dead at night, it is merely asleep, and like any good sleeper, it needs gentle company to drift into its dreams. Yasmin's eyes begin to droop, her breath slows even though she doesn't realize it. The warmth of the stone beneath her, the perfume of the flowers, and the soft sounds all work together like an ancient lullaby. Anash watches her, not to disturb but to protect the moment. He reaches for a folded linen shawl beside the bench and drapes it gently over her shoulders. Then, leaning back against the fountain, he closes his own eyes. And in the hush of the garden, beneath stars and sleepy vines, two dreamers drift together into the deepest part of the evening. Quote, Milky Way, and here, dear listener, let us pause. The garden has folded itself into night, and so may you. Let the sounds fade behind you, like petals drifting on still water. Close your eyes now. Let the stars watch over you, as they have watched over Persian gardens for thousands of years. You are safe here, you are warm, and sleep like a well-tended garden welcomes you home. Before the sun rises, before the first bird lifts its head, the garden is cloaked in a deep, pearly quiet. This is the moment just before the world decides to wake, not asleep, not yet stirring. The sky is a gentle gray-blue wash and the earth holds its breath. From the gardener's hut, a small clay-walled room tucked neatly into the eastern edge of the orchard, the door creaks open. Anash steps out, wrapped in a soft wool shawl worn with age and love. He carries a clay lantern in one hand and a copper kettle in the other. The flame inside the lantern flickers behind oiled parchment, casting a halo of amber light that dances softly across the garden path. The stone beneath his feet is cold, slick with dew, and the scent of the earth is rich and silent. Not a bird has sung yet, not a leaf has moved. Even the wind, it seems, is still curled in its corner waiting for the light. He walks slowly, mindfully toward the garden's water channel, the same narrow stream that runs from the Kanat's hidden mouth far outside the walls. In the early hour, the water glimmers like obsidian, motionless and secretive. Anash kneels beside it and dips the kettle into the cool stream. The water welcomes it with a soft burble, like a whisper only the earth can hear. From the pocket of his robe he draws a small handful of dried herbs, wild thyme, rose petals, and a sliver of saffron wrapped in linen. These he drops into a carved wooden bowl which waits beside the hearth near the hut. Back inside, the small fire crackles to life, not loud, not bright, just steady. As the kettle begins to hum softly, steam coils up into the morning like prayers rising into clouds. The fire is a soft and steady heartbeat now, its breath curling into the kettle, coaxing warmth from within. The copper hums gently, a sound older than words. Anash lifts the lid for just a moment. A plume of steam floats upward, carrying with it the scents of rose, thyme, and that whisper of saffron, golden, dry, and warm like sunlight trapped in a thread. He pours the infusion into 2 small clay cups. The tea is the color of morning light, soft amber with tiny red flecks dancing along the surface. He doesn't drink right away. He carries the 2 cups outside, back into the hush of the garden. The sky is just now shifting, a pale blush blooming low on the eastern edge where the horizon gently curves. A thin breeze begins to stir, like the garden taking its first slow breath of the day. Then, faintly, a single note. Not quite a song, not yet. Just one chirp, one small hopeful declaration from somewhere in the mulberry trees. And then another, and another. A quiet chorus begins, sleepy and scattered at first as though the birds are yawning between notes, but it grows gently, until the branches above seem to hum with life. Anash places 1 cup of tea on a wide flat stone near the pond's edge, a gift for whoever should wander by, not always taken but always left. His own cup he cradles in both hands. He walks slowly past the citrus trees, now tipped in golden light, to the base of a large cedar where he sits cross-legged in the still cool grass. The cup warms his palms, he drinks in small measured sips. The birdsong thickens, the shadows lighten. A petal from a nearby pomegranate flower drifts down beside him and lands soundlessly on the stone. And somewhere in the distance, a wooden gate creaks open, not with alarm but with familiarity. The garden is waking. The first full light of day arrives not with a shout but a sigh. It brushes across the tiled path like the hem of a silk robe, it lingers in the folds of ivy, it settles in the dimples of ripe quince and the scalloped edges of grape leaves hanging heavy on the vine. Anash finishes his tea and sets the empty cup by the base of the cedar tree. It will stay there until the evening, waiting for the birds or perhaps a thirsty beetle. From beyond the fig wall a small figure approaches, quiet feet padding on cool stone. It is Yasmin, the young apprentice, no more than 10 summers old. Her tunic is loose of linen dyed the faintest yellow, and her hair is braided back with a bit of dried jasmine tied at the end. She carries a wicker basket tucked under her arm, and wears a sleepy smile. "Good morning, Ostad," she says softly, using the word for teacher. Anash smiles without looking up. "The grapes are watching," he says gently, "and the rosemary's listening. Let's not wake them too fast." Yasmin giggles in a whisper and kneels beside him. Together, they begin the first task of the morning, checking the grapevines that run along the low trellises near the central fountain. The vines have been growing since early spring, guided by reed lattices tied together with twine. Their leaves now rustle slightly, whispering like 100 little sails in the morning breeze. Yasmin walks slowly down the row, her fingers brushing the underside of each leaf, checking for insects, for curled tips, for thirsty stems. Anash follows behind her with a woven brush, gently dusting off any webs or tiny pests that might have settled overnight. Neither of them speaks, not out of strictness but because the silence feels sacred. The vines seem to listen when it's quiet. In one corner, Yasmin finds a small nest tucked behind a cluster of grapes. 3 pale speckled eggs sit nestled inside, still warm. She gestures quietly, and Anash nods once. They skip that section of the trellis, a safe haven for the feathered mother. Nearby, a wide ceramic basin collects water from a hidden spout in the wall. Anash takes a clay dipper and pours a gentle stream over the roots of a parched vine. The water sinks into the soil with a slow hush. All around them, the scent of crushed herbs and wet earth begins to bloom in the air. Beyond the grapevines the path turns slightly, curving between smooth white stones warmed by the sun. It leads toward the herb beds, square and tidy patches of earth bordered with low bricks, each one filled with carefully nurtured plants gathered and remembered across generations. The herb garden is awake in its own way, not loud or restless but vibrant. Here the morning heat lifts the oils from the leaves, releasing aromas that swirl and mix in the air like a gentle potion. Mint, basil, tarragon, marjoram. And somewhere, hidden among the taller stalks, a shy bloom of blue borage peeks through. Anash kneels by the first bed and pinches a few thyme sprigs between his fingers. He holds them to Yasmin's nose. "What do you smell?" he asks. Yasmin inhales deeply, her eyes closing in thought. "Like the air before it rains," she murmurs, "and bread baking and something like a sleepy cat." Anash chuckles softly. "Good, that means it's strong enough for tea and clever enough to hide its truth." They gather just a handful, never too much, always leaving the roots untouched and a few sprigs behind for the bees. The bees, after all, are part of the garden's breath. Without them, the fig trees sulk and the roses forget to bloom. In the corner, a pair of cats are curled in the shade of an olive tree, paws tucked beneath their bellies, eyes blinking slowly with the wisdom of creatures who never rush. One lifts its head, sniffs the air, and then returns to its slumber. Nearby, Yasmin discovers a sprig of lavender gone wild, tall and gangly with crooked purple flowers dancing in the breeze. She leans in close and whispers, "You're not where you're supposed to be." Anash hears her and smiles. "Even herbs get restless," he says. "They dream of cliffs and rivers too." They walk together between the beds, brushing their fingers across soft leaves and dusty stems. Each touch stirs another scent, like turning the pages of a fragrant old book. At the edge of the beds, beneath the spreading arms of an ancient olive tree, they sit for a while. The ground is warm, the air thick with green perfume. Yasmin hums a small tune, one her grandmother used to sing while kneading dough, and Anash joins in, just barely, his voice a low breath beneath hers. And in that quiet patch of earth, beneath the branches and among the herbs, time seems to slow, even the wind pauses to listen. From the herb beds the path becomes more ornamental, bordered by smoother stones and planted with deliberate symmetry. Small ground-covering violets spread across the earth like scattered jewels, their purple blooms catching the early light. This part of the garden was designed for stillness, not the stillness of sleep but of reflection, of pause, a place where thoughts walk more slowly and where silence has form. At its heart lies a wide low pool, shallow, quiet and mirror-like. The basin is carved from pale stone, its edges softened by time and the touch of many hands. Marble frogs perch on each corner, their mouths shaped to pour thin streams of water. Though this morning they are silent, the water within the pool is still, not stagnant but perfectly calm, like a polished mirror laid gently upon the earth. Yasmin walks up to the edge and crouches. She sees her own face, but softened by the angle of light and the slight movement of the breeze. Her reflection ripples, then reforms. Beside her, Anash traces a finger along the edge of the stone. "This pool was here before I was born," he says, "and before my teacher and his teacher too. It has watched more mornings than we can count." Around the basin are statues, each seated or resting, carved from pale stone. They're not grand, not meant for temples or kings. They are figures of quiet contemplation, a musician with an absent flute, a scholar with a closed scroll, a woman holding a bird whose wings have long since worn away. Moss grows at their bases, tiny ferns peek from the cracks. These statues do not speak, but they seem to be listening. Yasmin gently tosses a petal into the water, a bright pink blossom from the flowering almond tree nearby. It lands silently and drifts across the glassy surface, leaving the smallest wake. Anash kneels beside her, quiet for a long time. "Some say," he whispers, "that the pool remembers, not in words but in stillness." They both listen, not for anything loud but for the hum that fills quiet places, the kind of silence that holds 1,000 forgotten footsteps, 1,000 sunrises. A dragonfly hovers above the water, its wings a shimmer of green and bronze. It lands on the pink petal and rides gently across the pool. Behind them, the olive leaves flutter, and a fig falls with the softest thump onto the earth. As the sun climbs higher in the sky, the light turns golden and drowsy, the garden's colors shift, greens deepen, flowers bow their heads slightly, and even the bees seem to hum a slower tune. Anash and Yasmin make their way toward the pomegranate grove, where the trees are older and wider than elsewhere in the garden. Their twisted trunks hold centuries of seasons, and their branches stretch protectively above like the arms of a grandparent shielding little ones from the noonday sun. The fruit hangs low, round red globes with skins like burnished leather. Some split at the top to reveal glistening seeds within. A few have already fallen, their juice drying in dark splashes on the earth. The scent here is thick, part sweet, part tannic, with a faint trace of warm bark and drying leaves. At the center of the grove is a low table made of polished stone. Around it are cushions and woven mats, shaded completely by the canopy above. It is a place for resting, for sipping, and for speaking only when the words choose to come. Yasmin helps Anash unpack a small clay teapot from a basket. Inside, wrapped carefully in linen, are a few herbs they gathered earlier, mint, thyme, and a pinch of dried rose petals from a jar sealed last spring. They place the pot in a cradle of warm coals, surrounded by small bricks that hold the heat gently, not urgently. No flames, just a low, consistent warmth like the kind you find in memories. As the water begins to bubble, steam rises in soft curls, catching the golden light as it drifts upward through the red-green ceiling of pomegranate leaves. Yasmin leans close and inhales. "It smells like the garden is dreaming," she says, eyes half closed. Anash nods. "It always dreams at midday." From the basket he produces a small bowl of dried apricots, lightly dusted in flour, and a piece of soft cheese wrapped in leaves. They eat slowly, not out of hunger but to pass the time in stillness. A breeze whispers through the branches, stirring the dangling fruit and causing one to fall. Not suddenly, but like a decision finally made, it thumps softly into the grass and rolls a short distance, stopping by a curious beetle. Nearby, a dove coos lazily, hidden high among the limbs. The tea is poured into simple cups, no handles, the clay warm against their palms. It tastes of mint and roses but also of memory, the kind passed from one hand to another over many mornings just like this. They do not speak much. The silence here is not empty. It is filled with birdsong, breeze, and the sound of pomegranate seeds splitting within their skins. When they do speak, it is in soft whispers, about the way the leaves shimmer, or the smell of the tea, or the odd shape of a cloud in the distance. The garden listens and agrees. After tea, the garden seems even quieter, as though it too has sipped from the same calming cup. Anash and Yasmin rise, leaving behind the shaded mats, and begin their slow stroll down the rose-lined path that curls like a ribbon through the central quarter of the garden. Here the world is soft, the air is perfumed, not overpowering but gently layered, as though the earth itself had exhaled through petals, pale pinks, rich reds, ivory whites. The roses climb along trellises, arch over walkways, and tumble across low walls. Some blooms are wide open, basking in the light, their centers filled with golden pollen and busy bees. Others are still curled tight, bashful in the sun. Petals drift down like feathers, covering the path in a slow, perpetual snowfall. Yasmin runs her fingers lightly along a blossom as they pass. She does not pick it. In this garden, flowers are seen, breathed in, and remembered, not taken. Anash points to a rose with streaks of white through the red like veins of cream. That one was grafted from 2 bushes, he says. My teacher called it the story rose, 2 parents, 1 bloom. They walk on in silence, their footsteps muffled by the petaled ground. At the far end of the rose walk, the sound of water returns, a familiar trickle, but clearer now, more playful. It draws them onward until the path opens into a circular space bordered by smooth cedarwood benches and soft spreading fig trees. At its center, a round stone fountain. Not grand or tall, but perfectly balanced. A central spout rises like a blooming tulip and lets a slender stream of water fall into a shallow basin. The sound is like soft fingers tapping gently on a drum made of silk, steady, musical, soothing. Birds flit about its edge, drinking, fluffing their feathers, and occasionally hopping into the water to splash. The fountain never overflows. The water dances, falls, rests. Anash settles on a bench in the shade, and Yasmin joins him, tucking her knees beneath her. This is my favorite sound, she whispers, her eyes half-lidded. Anash nods, mine too, the garden's heartbeat. They sit for a long time, not to talk, not to do, but just to be. The fountain's rhythm slows their own breath. A breeze weaves through the trees, rustling fig leaves like a gentle lullaby. Somewhere behind them, a gardener's rake scratches softly against the soil. Yasmin closes her eyes, not to sleep but to rest. Her thoughts dissolve into the trickle of the water, the soft heat of the sun on her face, and the ever-present whisper of leaves in wind. For a few timeless moments, there is nothing but peace. Beyond the well-tended rose beds and beneath the shadows of fig and cypress, the garden unfurls in quiet layers, small turns in the path, uneven flagstones, and shady spaces where few ever linger. These are the garden's secrets, places not marked on any parchment or spoken of loudly, only found by those who walk without purpose, guided by curiosity or the soft pull of the unknown. Yasmin drifts ahead of Anash now, drawn by a narrow passage behind a pomegranate hedge. The shrubs part slightly, revealing a weathered arch of sun-bleached brick. She steps through slowly as though crossing into a dream. On the other side is a secluded nook, no larger than a bedroom, but held like a jewel within the folds of the garden. The air is cooler here, touched by the shadow of tall walls and the scent of shaded jasmine. An old stone bench leans gently against one wall, its legs uneven, its surface smoothed by years of sitting, thinking, resting. A small ceramic dish lies on the bench, chipped, glazed in fading turquoise, once meant for birdseed, now half filled with rainwater and fallen petals. Beside the bench, a narrow tree stretches upward, its branches forming a natural roof overhead. Its bark is silver and thin. The white almond, Anash murmurs, appearing quietly beside her. My grandfather said it only bloomed when the garden was truly at peace. They sit once again, not speaking. The sounds here are fewer, hushed. Only the hush of leaves, the distant echo of water, and the chirp of a single small bird hopping along the edge of the old dish. Yasmin leans back against the wall, gazing up at the canopy. A few almond blossoms have already bloomed, ghost pale and delicate as breath. They sway slightly with the breeze, like sleepy thoughts stirred gently awake. We never tend this part, Anash adds, almost to himself. It tends itself. The garden remembers. Yasmin lets her fingers trail along the stone beside her, where a name is faintly carved, not deeply, not as a monument, but as a whisper, just 4 letters softened by time. Perhaps it was a gardener, perhaps someone who once rested here, as they do now, someone who once listened to the same leaves, felt the same dappled light on their skin. They stay a long time in that secret place, watching the shadows shift and the breeze pass softly through the almond tree. Nothing asks for attention here. Nothing demands to be known. It is enough simply to sit, to breathe, to be. It is noon now in the ancient Persian garden. The sun has climbed high and pauses overhead, pouring down in wide beams that gild the tiled rooftops, the dusty olive leaves, the old marble walls. But down in the shaded groves, all grows still. Even the birds have quieted, their songs folded into the thick silence of midday. The doves that cooed earlier in the morning now rest along the warm roof edges. A cat naps beneath the lavender shrubs, one paw over its face, unmoving. Time does not stop, yet it does not hurry either. It simply breathes. Yasmin and Anash, having left the secret almond nook behind, now rest in a shaded pavilion. It is a modest one, not for royalty, but for those who tend and care. Its wooden columns are carved with curling vines and crescent moons smoothed by generations of passing hands. The roof above them filters the light, casting patterns on the ground below, diamond-shaped glimmers that shift gently as the leaves above stir with the faintest breeze. Anash leans back against one of the posts, his eyes half closed. This is the part of the day when the garden listens, he murmurs, not to us but to itself. Yasmin lies beside a basket of dried herbs, her head resting on a folded cloth. The scent of basil and thyme tickles her nose, grounding her gently. All around, the shadows stretch just slightly, reaching from the pillars to the edge of the grass. The silence is not empty, it is warm and whole. It cradles the listener like water holds a leaf. Even the water in the channels seems slower now, more reflective. Somewhere nearby a bee hums past, briefly breaking the silence, then fades again into the hot buzzing lull of summer. Yasmin blinks up at the filtered sky. Through the gaps in the woodwork, she sees a falcon riding the thermals far above, gliding silent, a single motionless dot against the cloudless dome of pale blue. She breathes in, slow and long. And the garden breathes with her. From the shaded pavilion, Anash rises slowly and gestures for Yasmin to follow. They move quietly down a gently sloping path bordered by cypress and fig, until they reach a modest doorway set into the garden's outer wall. The door is old, wooden, sun-bleached, with a brass handle dulled to a honeyed hue. A vine creeps over one corner of the frame, curling gently like an old scribe's flourish. Anash opens the door with a soft creak, revealing a cool interior lit by high, narrow windows. Inside, the air is still and fragrant, not with flowers, but with old paper, dried herbs, and faint traces of cedar and rosewater. This is the garden's seed room, a quiet archive of life. Clay jars line the shelves in rows and clusters, each marked with faded ink: tulip, saffron, hyacinth, barley, wild rose, lentil, fig, melon. Scrolls and folded papers are tucked into niches. Woven baskets hold bundles of dry stems tied with string. This room was once kept by my uncle, Anash says softly, and before him his mother. We call it the breath of the garden. Yasmin walks slowly, trailing her fingers along the shelf edges, the jars smooth and cool to the touch, each holding the future inside it in patient silence. One shelf holds only pomegranate seeds, each year stored in a different jar. These, Anash explains, are from a tree planted during the reign of Shah Abbas, that one from the year of the comet, and this from the spring my daughter was born. He lifts one jar carefully and shows it to Yasmin. Inside, the seeds are pale pink, curled like commas in the story of time. They sleep, he says, until the soil remembers them. At the back of the room is a small square window with a seat beneath it. Yasmin climbs up and sits, gazing out at a stretch of meadow behind the wall, golden in the sun, with wild herbs growing in long, slow waves. It feels like another world. Here the past and future live side by side, in each seed the memory of what has been, and the promise of what could grow again. Anash places a jar into her hands, one marked only with a faded sun symbol. Take this, he says, voice quiet, plant it when the moon is thin and the air smells of rain, it will know what to do. And in that still room, with jars around them like soft-voiced storytellers, Yasmin begins to understand that a garden is not only what blooms, but what waits, what is remembered, and what is quietly hoped for. Outside the seed room, the garden has changed again. The high sun of midday has begun its slow descent, and with it comes the afternoon hush, less still than noon but more settled than morning. The colors soften. The breeze returns, barely noticeable but carrying the scent of jasmine and stone warmed by hours of sun. Yasmin walks beside Anash again, but now they move with even less urgency, their footsteps more like drifting leaves than wandering feet. The garden's energy has shifted. It's no longer about tending, pruning, or gathering. It is now the time for resting, sipping, and remembering. At the heart of the garden stands a low stone sundial, not grand or gilded but smooth with age, its gnomon casting a soft shadow over faintly etched hour lines. Around it is a ring of fig trees and tall grasses, creating a patch of dappled shade that smells faintly of sweet sap and warm bark. Several flat cushions and reed mats lie scattered there, left by the morning workers who took their lunch nearby. Yasmin settles onto one, folding her legs beneath her, and Anash lowers himself beside her with a faint groan and a chuckle. A younger boy arrives, the son of one of the cooks, carrying a clay jug and two small bowls carved from polished mulberry wood. The jug sweats in the heat. When he uncorks it, the cool aroma of rosewater and fruit escapes like a shy spirit. Sherbet. It is not the frozen kind that will exist centuries later, but a chilled spiced drink made from crushed fruit, snow from the mountains stored in deep stone ice wells, and a touch of sour tamarind or lemon. This batch is pomegranate, with dried mint steeped overnight. The boy pours it slowly, the liquid catching the light as it flows. Yasmin holds the bowl with both hands. It's cold against her fingers, a contrast so soft it brings goosebumps to her arms. She takes a small sip. It tastes like all the colors of the garden, tart, bright, sweet, and grounding. Anash, with his bowl resting on his knee, begins to speak. Once, when the pomegranate tree was still a child, he says softly, the moon visited the garden. And just like that, a tale unfolds, not one from a scroll or a textbook, but one grown from soil, breath, and imagination. A garden tale passed from voice to voice, never written. It is the kind of story where plants talk, the wind answers, and animals help lost children find their way by leading them through lavender paths. Yasmin listens, not for the ending, but for the space between words, where the sunlight seems to thicken and the breeze curls gently through the fig leaves. It is not just a story, it is a lullaby told in the afternoon. And the sherbet, now half finished, rests beside her as her eyes begin to blink slowly. The shadow of the sundial now stretches long and thin, like the neck of a heron gliding low across the earth. It reaches toward the first stones of the cypress path, a quiet trail that winds along the eastern edge of the garden, hugged gently by tall ancient trees. Yasmin rises first, the last sips of sherbet still cool in her belly. Anash follows with the slow, patient rhythm of someone who's lived long enough to know that every step has its own story. They don't speak at first, there is no need. The garden is now its own voice, low and steady, like a reed flute played at the edge of a dream. The cypresses rise in 2 columns on either side of the path. Their dark green needles whisper together in the wind, speaking an older language than Persian, one made entirely of hushes and hisses and the sound of years brushing against bark. Yasmin tilts her head up to see their tips. Some trees lean slightly inward, almost as if they're bowing to the garden. Others stand straight and proud, their branches dusted with the golden breath of the setting sun. Beneath them, the path is made of packed earth and flattened river stones, smooth to walk on, though worn in places by generations of sandals, bare feet, and soft-hooved animals. Anash reaches down and picks up a small pine cone, still fragrant and sticky with sap. He hands it to Yasmin, who cradles it like a tiny treasure. They pass a worn wooden bench tucked beside a marble basin. The water in it is still, reflecting the upside-down trees in perfect silence. A pair of doves sip from the edge, unbothered by the passing pair. And above them, lanterns begin to stir. Small glass lamps, no larger than a fist, hang from thin iron hooks hidden in the trees. During the day they blend with the branches, nearly invisible, but now one by one they begin to glow, each lit by a passing servant with a long taper, moving silently through the dusk like a firefly in human form. The first one flickers to life. Then, another. Then 2 more. Soft amber light spreads like honey through the path, chasing away the shadows but never banishing them completely. And still they walk, past lilies beginning to close, past cats curled like commas on stone ledges, past the last blooms of the jasmine that will open fully by night. Yasmin sighs. It's the kind of sigh that's not sadness, not joy, but simply the body recognizing beauty and peace, a soft release. Anash says nothing, but he smiles. And they continue, 2 shapes walking through a garden gently preparing for sleep. Evening has arrived in the garden, not as a sudden visitor, but as a shy guest, arriving slowly, quietly, with cool hands and a perfume of stars. The sky deepens from pale blue to soft violet. One by one, stars peek out like shy children behind curtains. In the eastern beds of the garden, a change has begun, slow, invisible at first, but steady. The night-blooming flowers awaken. There are beds of tuberose, their waxy white blossoms curled tight throughout the day, now loosening in the cooler air. Beside them, night-blooming jasmine exhales its first delicate scent, not sharp, not sweet, but lingering, like the memory of someone who once sang softly nearby. Yasmin kneels beside a moonflower vine. Its buds twitch almost imperceptibly, then open in slow motion, like paper folding outward, revealing pale blooms large as her hand. Their petals are so white they almost glow. Some things, says Anash beside her, are not meant for the day. They are shy, but the night calls them gently. He doesn't explain further. He doesn't need to. The garden is showing her everything. Small moths, dusty gray and silver, drift lazily through the air, drawn not by color but by scent. They land gently on petals and hover beside blossoms like whispered thoughts. Yasmin watches one flutter by her wrist. It doesn't startle. It simply flaps slowly, without urgency, as though caught in a lullaby. Somewhere beyond the hedges, a gentle ney flute begins to play. No one can see the musician, but the notes are soft, bending like willow branches curling through the garden paths. The garden is no longer waking. It is simply shifting into its nighttime self. Everything becomes rounder, quieter, slower. Even the water in the channels reflects differently, not blue now but soft silver, like poured moonlight. Yasmin lies back on the warm stone beside the flower bed. The heat from the day still lingers in the stone, and the perfume of blooming petals surrounds her like a silken shawl. The breeze lifts gently, and the stars above slowly continue their silent dance. Now that the moon has fully risen, its silver rays dance lightly over the garden walls. Shadows grow longer, curling around the stone and wood with gentle fingers. In a corner of the garden near the eastern wall, there is a low wooden lattice, simple, woven of cypress and cedar, its surface dappled with curling vines and the faintest glow of fireflies. Under this lattice, a gathering begins. Soft lanterns are lit, not many and not too bright. They glow amber and gold, their flames small and steady, flickering through colored glass shades. The air smells of mint and smoke. A small brazier has been kindled near the ground, and beside it sits an old copper kettle, aged and slightly dented, with a history of many evenings steeped in warmth. As the water simmers, a quiet clinking of cups sounds nearby, ceramic, hand-painted, each one different, some chipped in places that tell stories of years long past. Yasmin, her robes lightly dusted from her walk among the moonflowers, settles cross-legged on a woven mat. Beside her, Anash places small saucers of dates and slivers of dried apricot on a low tray. A small bowl of crushed walnuts glistens with a touch of honey. Others arrive silently, a weaver with hands wrapped in linen, an old poet with cloud-white hair, and two sisters from the kitchen who speak softly in rhymes. No introductions are needed. Here at this hour everyone is known, not by name but by presence. The tea is poured, deep red and fragrant, with dried rose petals and wild thyme floating near the surface. A sprig of mint is pressed gently between the fingers before being dropped into each cup. And then comes the sound that is the heart of any evening, quiet laughter. Not loud, not forced, just gentle shared joy, the kind that rises when bodies are rested and minds no longer chase the sun. Anash tells a story, not a tale of kings or battles but of a fig tree that grew sideways one summer and still bore fruit. The weaver hums an old lullaby between sips, while Yasmin listens with her eyes half closed, the warmth of her cup resting against her palms. The night deepens but it does not darken, here it glows. In this part of the garden, time no longer ticks, it breathes, like the soft puff of steam from the kettle or the drifting scent of sweet herbs rising into the cool night air. The laughter now fades into soft sighs, the final drops of tea glisten in the bottom of painted cups. Around the lattice guests begin to shift, not in haste but like petals closing for the night. A few stretch gently, brushing sleep from their eyes with the backs of their hands. The poet leans against the lattice post, gazing up at the stars with the look of someone listening to verses spoken by the sky. Yasmin finishes her last sip of tea, its warmth lingering in her chest. She glances toward Anash, who has already stood and now gestures quietly with his hand. She follows. Not down a stone path or through the columns, but along a narrow trail behind the vines, half overgrown, where thyme and grasses weave together and old stepping stones tilt slightly from years of earth shifting beneath them. They walk slowly, wordlessly. The moonlight paints long lines on the ground, interrupted only by the fluttering silhouettes of moths. After some time they reach it, the old garden gate. It is hidden behind a curtain of ivy and creeping fig. The wood is cracked in places but strong. It bears no handle, no lock, just a wooden frame that hums with memory. Before the palace grew large, Anash says softly, this was the only entrance to the garden, when the walls were lower, when the world moved slower. He brushes his fingers along the wood. Yasmin steps closer and sees carvings faint, worn by time, shapes of birds, leaves and stars half faded into the grain. Stories. Or perhaps pieces of them, left behind like whispered poems in a forgotten language. This gate was never meant to be opened loudly, he murmurs. It was for slipping in or slipping out without disturbing the jasmine. Yasmin smiles. She can imagine it. A young gardener in an older time, slipping in before dawn with a trowel tucked in his sash, or a poet returning under starlight, scrolls under his arm, heart full of quiet verses meant for no one in particular. They sit together on the stone step before the gate, not to open it but simply to be near it. Above them, the wind rustles the ivy gently, like pages turning in an invisible book. And for a long while, there are no words at all. Just the breeze, the scent of the last night blooming flowers, and the ancient hush that gardens know well, the kind of silence that grows slowly like roots in the dark. Yasmin walks slowly back along the path, her slippers brushing through low herbs and fallen petals. The air is cooler now, not cold, just touched by night. She has left the old gate behind, but something of its quiet still clings to her, like a dream's edge. She steps into a part of the garden where no lights glow, only the moonlight paints the stones. Here lies the garden's heart, not a fountain or a bed of flowers, but a square pool of still water, surrounded by low stone benches and whispering palms. It is said the water here is old, older than the palace, older than the garden itself. Yasmin approaches slowly. The surface is so smooth it looks like dark glass, not a ripple, not a movement, just the moon's reflection resting perfectly in its center. She kneels beside it and peers in. There she is, not quite herself but a gentler version, reflected upside down. The stars shimmer faintly beside her, and the breeze that touches her cheek does not disturb the surface at all. Anash had once told her, "These pools are like memory. If you are still enough, they show you things you do not know you've forgotten." She had not understood then, but tonight, she begins to. She leans closer and sees more than her reflection. She sees the tips of the date palms swaying above, and a crescent moon watching without blinking. She sees the shadows of vines curling downward as though reaching toward the water's stillness. And then, just for a moment, she thinks she sees someone else. A figure, distant and soft, kneeling on the opposite side, a reflection of a reflection, a gardener from 100 years ago, a poet whose voice once echoed here. It is gone in a blink, or maybe it was never there. Still, the garden doesn't ask her to understand, only to sit and breathe, and be. So she does. She lowers herself to one of the stone benches, her hands folded in her lap. She gazes out at the pool, and the stars, and the shadows that move ever so slowly across the ground. The wind carries a distant note, not of music this time but of silence deep enough to hear one's own heartbeat. Time drips slowly here. And everything, stone, water, girl and moon, becomes part of the same vast quiet. The garden has grown still, not empty but settled. No footsteps echo, no teacups clink. The poets have ceased their murmurings. Even the wind, so talkative earlier, now whispers in a slower tongue. Yasmin remains seated by the moonlit pool, her eyes half closed, fingers trailing lightly on the edge of the stone. The garden doesn't speak, but it breathes, in petals and leaves, in wind and water. Above her, one final blossom, a pale rose near the edge of an arch, begins to curl in on itself, not with fear or sadness, but like a sigh at the end of a long fragrant day. Petal by petal, it folds inward. The entire garden seems to join in that gesture. The vines relax, the fountains slow, even the birds, nestled deep in the olive branches, draw their wings around themselves and do not stir. This is not sleep as humans know it. It is older than that. It is the kind of sleep that stones remember, the kind that falls upon marble and soil alike. In the distance, Yasmin hears a soft, rhythmic sound. The gardener's sandals as he sweeps a low path near the pomegranate grove. He does not rush. His broom is made of date palm twigs, and it hums faintly as it moves across the earth. Esh, sshhh, sshhh. It is the sound of the garden tucking itself in. Nearby, the lanterns have been extinguished one by one. Only the faint glow of stars on dew remains to light the paths. A small clay lamp near the garden's far corner sputters once, then fades. And yet nothing feels lost. Because the garden will wake again. Not with alarm or fanfare, but gently, as it always has. Yasmin finally rises, steps as light as falling petals. She walks slowly along a gravel path, the pebbles soft underfoot. She pauses once to touch a fig leaf, broad and cool with moisture. She does not pluck it. She simply lets her hand rest there for a breath and then moves on. The trees do not call her back. The pool does not reflect again. The garden simply continues to exhale, long, deep and peaceful. At the threshold of the courtyard, Yasmin turns once more. The garden lies behind her like a sleeping giant, fragrant, still, and wrapped in velvet shadow. She bows her head slightly, not in ceremony, but in gratitude. Then, without a word, she disappears through the stone arch and into the hush beyond. The sky has not yet surrendered to color, but something new stirs, something warmer, more fragrant. Before the rooster crows, before the gardener stirs, the kitchen courtyard wakes. A square of stone tucked just beyond the main garden wall, framed by fig trees and pots of mint. It is not grand. There are no fountains here, no mosaics or marble benches, but the silence that lives here is just as deep, just as sacred. In the center sits an old clay oven, tenure, its sides the color of desert sand, patched over decades with fresh earth and straw. To one side a stack of dried wood leans carefully against the wall, smelling faintly of olive bark and eucalyptus. A woman kneels beside the oven. Her name is Perissa. Her hair is wrapped in linen, her robe plain but soft, dyed in a faint shade of dusty lavender. She moves with no urgency, for she is the first rhythm of the house, and everything will follow her timing. She gathers twigs in one hand and places them in the oven's hollow mouth. With her other hand, she cups a flint and steel. Tack, tack. A small spark leaps, then another. Soon a soft orange glow pulses inside the oven, and the first faint warmth spreads out across the stones. The courtyard smells of earth and smoke. As the fire takes hold, Perissa leans back on her heels and listens. Somewhere above, an apricot branch rustles. One fruit, not yet ripe, falls to the ground and rolls a few inches toward the fire. She picks it up gently, smooths its fuzz with her thumb and places it aside. She does not yet speak, words come later. First, there is tea. Perissa moves like the morning itself, slow, steady, and full of small warmths. From a low stone shelf along the wall, she retrieves a lidded basket. Inside are bundles of dried herbs, some soft green, others pale silver, one wrapped in thread the color of crimson threads from old pomegranates. Each one is labeled not in ink, but in memory. She sets them out carefully. There is Bedrange Bouya, lemon balm, for the nerves, Goli Sork, the dried rose petals, their blush still faintly visible even after months in the dark, Zireh, cumin seed, crushed and warm to the nose, and Bahar Naranj, bitter orange blossom, rare and precious. Perissa chooses only a pinch of each. Into a clay teapot, she layers them softly, like silk scarves folding over one another. She pours water drawn from a tall copper kettle, the handle warm from its time resting near the fire. The steam curls upward like the tail of a cat, and the scent begins to bloom. No sugar, not yet, that will come later. She places the lid on gently and lets it sit, undisturbed, infused by time and silence. The scent that rises is like something from a gentle dream, warm, floral, a little citrus, a little earth. It smells like safety, like familiarity. While it steeps, Perissa prepares the tray, not rushed, not elaborate. A simple brass tray, slightly dented at the corners. 2 cups, their rims uneven from the hand that made them. A folded linen cloth, still smelling faintly of lavender where it was dried on a branch days ago. She does not call anyone to wake. The tea will speak for itself when it is ready. She kneels again and breathes it in. No hurry. The morning is long, and every fragrance has its moment. The light has changed. It now stretches its golden fingers across the flagstones of the courtyard, catching the rim of the brass tray, glinting faintly against the curve of the teapot. The air is no longer cool but soft, the kind of warmth that settles into stone and skin alike. Perissa does not need to look up to know they are coming. The first to arrive is always the oldest gardener. He does not knock or announce himself. He knows this space and it knows him. His name is Bahman, and he walks with a wooden cane polished smooth by his own hands over many years. Perissa pours his tea without a word. He sits on a woven stool beside the fig tree, placing his cane across his knees like a quiet guest. He nods his thanks and drinks, slow, without slurping, with the kind of appreciation that makes even the rose petals feel noticed. The second to arrive is one of the young boys from the orchard, no older than 10, but already proud of his basket work and early plucking. His hands smell of apricots and green almonds. Perissa smiles at him and places a small round loaf on a plate, still warm from earlier baking. The surface is dusted with sesame seeds and crushed anise. She breaks it in half and places a spoonful of soft cheese on a fig leaf beside it. There is no rush. The courtyard holds them all in a circle of quiet, a slow-blooming peace that asks for nothing and gives everything. No announcements, no instruction, just the quiet music of soft footsteps, clinking cups, and early bites of bread. Far beyond the wall, a dove coos gently in the rafters. The day is beginning, but here it still lingers in the sacred space between dreams and wakefulness. As the last sip of tea warms the tongue and the bread settles quietly in the belly, Perissa begins the next ritual, one older than the walls around her. She lifts the lid of a small wooden box and reveals threads of saffron, long, thin, curled like whispers of flame. Their color is deep between sun and blood, with a fragrance that clings to the air like a remembered perfume. This saffron did not come from far. It came from the garden's own small patch, a sunlit stretch beside the fig hedge where crocus blooms emerge in the crisp of autumn, each thread plucked by hand, each one dried on screens made from mulberry slats. She takes only a few threads, too many would be wasteful, too few and the magic fades. In the stone mortar, she places them gently. Beside it, she sets a few drops of warm water already steeped with rose essence. The pestle is smooth from generations of use. As she begins to crush the saffron slowly with a gentle rhythm, the smell deepens and blooms, not sharp, not spicy, but soft, floral and golden. Bauman watches her, nodding once, not with approval but with memory. When the threads are dust, she pours in the rose water and stirs it until the liquid turns a quiet amber, the color of sun through old honey. This saffron water will not go into food yet. It will wait in a small glazed bowl, resting by the hearth to be added just before the fire is finished. Like patience itself, it sits beside them. Not everything in a kitchen begins with flame. Some things begin in stone. Some begin in silence. And some begin with the thinnest thread of red, ground until it turns to gold. The coals in the tandoor oven are glowing now, not fierce, not wild, but low and steady, like the heartbeat of the garden itself. Perissa stirs them softly with an iron hook, careful not to disturb the ashes resting over them. She places a wide clay pot near the edge of the hearth, not directly above the flame but where warmth will reach it slowly, evenly, as if by secret agreement. Inside the pot is something simple, soaked rice resting in water with a touch of salt, and a hint of lemon peel dropped in not for sharpness but brightness, a kind of whispering fragrance. The lid is placed on gently, and a small cloth covers the top to keep the moisture within. She does not time it, nor does she watch the pot. She listens. For the faint change in scent. For the soft sound of bubbling beneath the lid. Bauman, still nearby, lifts his face slightly. He too knows the change when it comes. The moment when grain begins to swell, each kernel drawing warmth inward, opening quietly like a bud. The rice will not be rushed. It will take the morning in pieces. First the simmer, then the steam, then the saffron. Perissa leans back, arms folded gently across her lap. She closes her eyes and breathes. There is nothing else to be done for now. Just to wait and to be near, not far from the kitchen wall beneath a sun-dappled trellis laced with climbing jasmine, the herb garden waits in quiet fullness. The soil is dark and generous here. Every stone edge is softened by growth and the morning air is rich with mingled perfumes, mint, sharp and clear, dill, feathery and sweet, basil, cool and grounding. A small breeze stirs through, lifting scent and leaf alike. Perissa steps into this patch with bare feet. The earth is warm but not harsh. Her fingers trail over the plants without haste, as if greeting old friends. She does not carry a basket, only a wide fold of cloth tied at her waist. She picks what she needs, not by the bundle but by intuition. A few long fronds of dill, sprigs of mint still wet with dew, a handful of crushed coriander leaves, their green releasing a spicy lemony note. Every pluck is done in rhythm with breath. She moves silently through the patch, not wanting to disturb the bees that hum softly around a flowering oregano bush. They do not mind her. They move with the same peaceful slowness. Now and then she pauses to inhale deeply, not just to test the herbs but to remember. Scents carry memories here, of spring dishes, of her mother's apron, of old recipes that never needed to be written down. The cloth at her waist begins to fill, gently bulging with the soft, cool herbs of morning. From the doorway, Bauman watches her again. There is something almost sacred about this gathering, a quiet ceremony that repeats each day without being spoken. The rice still simmers in its clay pot. And soon it will meet the garden. But for now the herbs are enough, green as fresh memory, calm as the space between heartbeats. Back at the clay hearth, the rice is nearing readiness. The air is warm and fragrant. A soft curl of steam lifts the lid of the pot now and then, whispering of grain and lemon peel. Perissa returns with her fold of herbs and lays them gently in a shallow ceramic bowl beside the hearth. She does not speak. Her movements are smooth, unhurried, hands remembering what they've done 1,000 times. From the small wooden shelf near the courtyard window, she reaches for the tiny brass bowl. Inside it is a treasure, a few strands of deep orange saffron soaked earlier in warm rose water. The liquid now glows like liquid gold, delicate and radiant. She swirls the bowl gently, watching the sun catch in the saffron threads. Then, with a long-handled spoon, she lifts a ribbon of the fragrant water and drizzles it into the rice, not over all of it, but in quiet spirals, letting the color run softly across the top. It pools in golden puddles, then slowly sinks into the steaming grains, leaving a trail of perfume behind. Bauman inhales, not sharply but with slow appreciation. The scent of saffron is not loud, but it is unmistakable, earthy, floral, like honey aged in sunlight. Perissa folds in a few of the herbs next, mostly dill with threads of mint and crushed coriander, just enough to add green among the gold. She does not stir hard, she lets the grains remain light, resting as they are. When she lifts the lid fully, the steam rises in a single soft plume, and for a moment all is still. No talking. No clatter. Just breath. Just rice. Just a garden's patience, made edible by the edge of the garden, where a tall fruit-heavy pomegranate tree leans its arms toward the center courtyard. A low table is set, simple and worn, with legs that have known many seasons. Its surface is smoothed by time, stained faintly with the memory of turmeric and tea. A linen cloth has been laid across it, hand-woven, with pale embroidery that tells no grand story, only the quiet loops of patience. Perissa places the ceramic dish of rice at its center. It glows gently, golden from the saffron, flecked with green and ivory. Nothing about it is showy, yet everything feels reverent. Beside it she sets a bowl of thick yogurt, topped with cucumber slices and a dusting of dried mint. Another dish holds glossy olives dark as night. Flatbreads still warm from the morning fire rest in a cloth-lined basket. There is no rush to eat. Instead, the table waits like a friend who knows you'll arrive in time. Bauman joins her there, moving slowly, barefoot on the warm stone. He folds himself down beside the table, knees loose, breath even. Perissa pours water from a clay jug into simple cups. The water glistens, drawn earlier from the cool basin, tasting faintly of stone and shade. A breeze drifts through the courtyard. The pomegranate leaves flutter like thin green coins. Now and then a distant bird trills. They eat quietly, not because of silence but because of calm. Each bite is unhurried. Flavors are allowed to bloom, the soft spice of dill, the quiet floral lift of saffron, the clean sharpness of mint against yogurt. Here, a meal is not about fullness. It's about being present, about tasting the day as it unfolds on your tongue. And as they eat, the garden watches, not with judgment but with quiet pleasure, for it has given all these things, grain, herb, fruit, time. The midday sun leans gently toward the west, shadows deepen beneath the leaves. And everything slows. The meal is over. Not finished, but faded gently away, like the last note of a lullaby lingering in the air. Perissa and Bauman sit back, not rising yet. There is no need. The low table remains half full, cradling leftovers that seem untouched by time. A few grains of rice cling to the curve of the dish. A smear of yogurt waits beside a folded piece of bread. But neither of them rushes to clear it. For now there is a quietness deeper than silence, one made of warmth and wind, of full bellies and satisfied hearts. The sun, once bright and watchful, has slipped behind the western fig trees, casting long soft shadows over the courtyard. The light has turned golden, not the sharp gold of morning but the mellow honey of afternoon. Birdsong has changed too. Gone are the chirping flurries of early day. What remains is quieter, longer whistles, softer calls, as if the birds, like the people, are settling into stillness. The pomegranate tree sways, casting dappled patterns across the stone floor. A few leaves fall, not dramatically, just slowly twirling to the earth like sleepy dancers. Perissa leans back against a garden wall, her shawl pulled loosely around her shoulders. Bauman lies beside the fig tree, one hand behind his head, eyes half-lidded, not quite asleep but nowhere near awake. The garden is not working now. The kitchen fires are dim. The orchard paths are quiet. Even the bees are slower, drifting lazily among the last blooms of the day. And here, in the hush of it all, time folds inward. This is the moment between effort and evening. Between fullness and fading. Between what was and what is to come. Nothing moves too quickly. Nothing demands. The garden rests. And so do they. When they rise from the stone floor, it is not out of duty or routine, but like petals opening under gentle light, unhurried, almost accidental. The meal remains behind them, folded in sunlight and linen. No one minds. The garden has no clock. Perissa smooths her shawl. Bauman stretches his arms upward, then lets them fall again by his sides, loose and rested. They begin a walk, not a purposeful one, not toward anything, just through the garden's older paths, beneath the tall, silent cypress trees that line the outer lanes like guardians of time. These trees are older than the fountain, older than the fig, older than any memory they carry. Their trunks are straight and silver-barked, their arms held skyward in quiet stillness. Beneath them, shade pools like ink in slow water. The earth underfoot is soft with crushed leaves and dust. Each step is quiet. They pass by beds of flowers that lean toward the path, hollyhocks in gentle blush, lavender with tips that sway at the slightest breeze, and wild chamomile in cheerful yellow clusters. Butterflies wander lazily, flitting from bloom to bloom with no real direction. a dragonfly hovers near a stone basin, its wings like sunlight caught in glass. No one speaks. There is no need. The thoughts that fill their minds are soft like folded cloth, memories of childhood games, of songs once heard, of nothing in particular. Only the garden. Only now. A fig leaf floats down in front of Perissa, its edges curled like parchment. She picks it up and tucks it into the fold of her sleeve without looking. They turn a corner where the cypress lane bends beside a low hedge of jasmine. Its flowers have opened fully in the heat, releasing a fragrance that's neither loud nor faint, just enough to slow your breath when it reaches you. The sky above is still pale blue, but it leans gently toward dusk. The light filtering through the cypress branches is thin now like gauze. It rests on their faces and shoulders without weight. And so they walk. Not to arrive, but to be. And the garden walks with them, every flower and tree bearing witness to this soft, eternal pause. The cypress lane ends not with a gate, nor with a wall, but with a soft, open turn, a gentle bend in the garden where the neatness of its paths becomes looser, wilder, freer. Perissa and Bahman find themselves stepping between the tall, leaning almond trees of the orchard. These trees are shorter than the cypress, their branches reaching outward instead of up. Their trunks are dark and twisted, and their leaves flicker in the wind like pages turning. Some almonds have fallen to the ground, their green husks split. A few bees still linger here, attracted by the sweet sap that leaks from the stems. The scent of earth is stronger now, dry soil, cracked bark, and warm wind mix with something faintly sweet like dried apricot. Beyond the orchard, the garden drops away into a low ridge. Here, at this gentle edge, the world expands. There is a small flat stone worn smooth by time and many seated legs, and they take it now. From here, the view is quiet and wide. The mountains rise in the far distance, not in sharp drama but in soft, slow curves. Blue-gray and eternal, they wear the fading sun like a shawl. Light plays along their ridges, catching on old rock and new grass. Between the garden and the mountains, the land rolls gently. Fields, groves, and winding water channels lie in the golden light. From this far, the world looks still. Even the village, with its clay roofs and smoke curling lazily from afternoon fires, feels part of the same hush. Perissa rests her cheek on her knees, drawn close beneath her shawl. Bahman traces small circles in the dust with a stick, not really thinking, just feeling. They say nothing. Sometimes being still beside someone is the closest kind of speaking. And the garden seems to know this. It does not intrude, it does not call them back, it simply lets them be, two small shapes in the vastness of earth and air held by roots and mountain light. A hawk circles far above, its wings glide without effort, a shadow dancing over the fields. A shepherd's dog barks, far away, a sound so distant it feels like a memory instead of a moment. And all the while, the garden listens. From the edge of the orchard, a narrow trail leads inward again, curving between low-growing thyme and whispering reeds. This is the beekeeper's path, though no sign names it so. It is marked not by stone or symbol, but by the sound of low, constant humming. The bees make their presence known before they are seen. They come and go with purpose, weaving between wild blossoms and open hives. Their golden bodies shimmer in the late sun, drifting in soft spirals above lavender patches and the edges of warm brick enclosures. Here along the wall the old clay hives stand in neat rows, domed and drowsy like sleeping hills. Bees slip in and out of the tiny entrance holes, never hurried, never lost. Perissa pauses before one. She does not reach out, the hives are not for touching, but she watches with the quiet patience of someone who has always shared space with them. The beekeeper is nowhere to be seen, but his presence lingers. In the carefully swept ground, in the covered pots of cooled wax, in the shallow dish left for thirsty bees beside the date palm's root. The scent here is thick and sweet, warm honey, crushed herbs, dry clay. And beneath it something softer still, the perfume of time, a garden's breath drawn slowly over generations. Bahman kneels beside a cluster of wild marjoram, watching a bee crawl delicately along its flower spikes. He says nothing, only smiles barely, and lets the moment hold. The sun is slipping lower now, gilding the edges of the hives and casting long blue shadows between the plants. The path widens. At the end of the beekeeper's path, near a small olive tree, stands a clay table. Upon it, a shallow bowl holds what looks like amber. Honey, clear and golden, glows in the light like glass. Next to it, a wooden dipper and two small ceramic cups. As if invited by some old rhythm, Perissa lifts the dipper and pours a thread of honey into one cup, then the next. The motion is ceremonial but not grand, it's just what one does. They sip. The honey is warm from the sun, thick and delicate with hints of rose and thyme. It coats the tongue slowly, a final sweetness, a softness that stays. Beyond the olive tree, the last of the day fades into quiet. Evening birds call once, twice, then settle. The breeze has turned cool, rustling the reeds and the flowering trellises near the garden's western edge. They do not speak. Words now would only echo what the garden has already said, in fragrance, in light, in the hush of bees. And as they turn slowly back toward the inner courtyard, the garden folds gently around them, like a blanket drawn up to the chin of the earth. A cicada begins its low, rhythmic call. A distant water channel hums softly through reeds. Somewhere a pot is lifted, a door is closed, a fig falls unseen into the grass. And now, dear listener, may you carry this stillness with you, wherever your eyes may close. Imagine the scent of sun-warmed fig leaves, the sound of bees fading into silence, the soft trickle of water near your pillow. Let your breath slow like the garden's dusk. Let your thoughts drift like fallen petals on the pool. You have wandered through quiet cypress lanes, tasted honey in fading light, and listened to the unspoken lullabies of ancient Persian soil. There is nothing more you need do. Let sleep find you now, not in haste but as gently as shadow settles on old stone. Good night, traveler of peaceful times. Sleep and dream of still gardens.